What happens at the bachelor party doesn't always stay at the bachelor party, especially when what happens is a total fiasco. This video has tales of the craziest stag night disasters of all time, including one about a waitress making a surprise appearance at the worst possible time is so wild that it's unforgettable. The bachelor party was in Las Vegas. This actually turned out to be the worst idea ever. See, nobody knew that the groom had a problem with his gambling. First night, we were there. We're all in the casino having drinks and playing cards. The groom gets up to get a drink and never comes back to the group. After hours of searching for him, we finally find him sitting on the bathroom floor of his hotel room, crying his eyes out. He lost over $10,000 in just a few hours playing blackjack. We were there for 3 more days, and he pretty much didn't even leave his hotel room and was terrified to go home and tell his fiancée he gambled away most of their savings. I feel bad for this guy, really, but the one thing that doesn't stay in Vegas, no matter how badly you wish it did, the bank statement that says you used to have $10,000, but now you don't anymore. Yikes. A girl I knew from high school got married right when she turned 18. I was the only person who went to the bachelorette besides her family, and I mostly went because I felt bad because she didn't really have friends, and I wanted her to know I was there for her, not anybody else, in case she ever needed help. The party was in her auntie's garage. Me and the bride-to-be were both 18, and she was very Christian and old-fashioned. The other guests were her 2 aunties, her mom, her grandma, and 3 of her mom's friends. 9 people in total, and I hate to say it, but it was a pretty trashy scene. It was also a dry party because of the underage bride. We were playing dumb bridal games when they pulled her chair in the middle of the garage floor and music came on. A male dancer comes in and everyone starts hollering except the bride and myself. We locked eyes and are both utterly horrified. We were both very innocent kids, but I think it was even worse for that poor dancer. He was 100% horrified at the scene in the garage. He's doing everything he can to avoid the young, terrified bride, including grinding up on Grandma. Grandma and Mom are stuffing $2 bills down his undies and grabbing him. They try to drag him over to the bride, and he's resisting with all his might. The song ends, and the guy stops dancing and has to beg for his pants back from Auntie number 1. They then refuse to pay him because he wouldn't give the bride a dance, and he and Auntie number 2 have it outside the garage door, where we can all hear them yelling. And here I thought I'd repressed that memory until now. Oof. You know it's awkward when even the hired dancer doesn't want to be involved. I honestly don't know if I'd ever recover seeing someone grinding up on my grandma. No, thank you. We planned a really unique bachelor party for my brother. We took him skydiving. We knew a small place that had a small hangar outside of a small city and decided this would be the place since we could do it for a small price. It was me, my brother, my sister, and another friend that was coming up from upstate, and we had an appointment at 5 p.m. for our jump. Long story short, the other friend left hours ahead of time to make sure he would arrive on time, but had major car problems and then got stuck in traffic, making him about an hour late instead. We were communicating during all of this and trying to decide whether we should wait or just go ahead and jump without him. Finally, we decided to ask the staff if there were any groups after us that we could trade appointments with so we could wait for our friend. Well, as fate would have it, there was a group of exactly 4 just after us. The other party agreed to swap times with us, and we had a later appointment. They were excited to be able to go sooner than they thought. My brother and I got there early, and we were having a great time watching the planes go up and the jumpers come down. They would go up 4 at a time, with 2 jumpers and 2 instructors jumping in tandem. and would land right in front of the hangar. It was fascinating for me to see how they would come in so fast, then just at the last minute, they would pull up and land. Anyway, the first two of the group we swapped with came in just fine, and my brother and I went out to watch the other two jump, before it was our turn to strap into the harnesses. We saw the jump, and we saw one of them deploy their chute, but the other fell way further. I remember thinking, wow, I hope I get an instructor that lets me fall that far. That looks way more fun. Eventually, their chute deployed, but as soon as it did, they started going into an uncontrolled spin. They were coming in hot and hit the ground out in the weeds, nowhere close to the landing pad. The staff were freaking out. This was the group that we had swapped with. The four in the group were a mother and her 3 daughters. The mother was the one that fell, and they took her off in an ambulance. I think she broke some bones. Needless to say, we didn't end up jumping that day. Anyway, the wedding the next morning was nice, although I think we all thought about everything that could have gone wrong the day before. We should probably just go to the club the next time. Just when you think you're getting a tame bachelor party, someone falls out of the sky in front of you. I don't know about you guys, but my idea of fun doesn't exactly involve jumping out of a plane the day before I get married, but maybe it would if I really hated my fiancé. My father-in-law was the best man for his best friend, and he planned the guy's bachelor party the night before the wedding. The bride-to-be was not a nice lady, and he had a strong dislike for her. He tried to talk his friend out of saying I do, but he failed. He wanted to sabotage the wedding. He took the groom out bar hopping in Chicago and got him completely toasted. He put him on a late night train, telling him it would take him home. The groom woke up 9 hours later somewhere in Kansas. All he had with him was his ID and enough cash for a return fare. By then, it was a few hours before the wedding, and the bride was freaking out. My father-in-law played dumb until the groom finally called, then he admitted to it. It took the groom pretty much the entire day to get home. My father-in-law was not invited to the rescheduled wedding a week later. The marriage lasted maybe a year. My father-in-law and the groom are still best friends to this day, though. Okay, I expected some pretty crazy stories, but I never expected one where the best man drops off the groom in another state. I guess the plan worked in a sense, and the two guys are still friends, but could you really forgive a friend who did this to you, even if they turned out to be right? I had my bachelor party like a month before my wedding. My friends and I are a bunch of nerds. We play League of Legends, but we decided to be cool and go out to some bars. We hit up the karaoke bar for a few songs, and then went to a local college bar for cheap drinks. But our third stop was a slip-up. We accidentally went to a gay bar. Anyway, one of my friends texts me and says, "Yo man, I'm sorry I can't make it, but what's the address?" Naively, I sent him the address. The boys and I go back to my friend's apartment, watch some TV, take some shots, and chat about life. The doorbell rings. An extremely large man, probably 6'6" tall and 250 pounds at least, is standing there. He says, "Yo, where the party at?" But that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 hours, at least 10 random dudes show up at the door ready to smash. Finally, some guy curses at us for not hiring hot women. Well, it turns out my friend had pranked us by posting my other friend's address online, saying it was a house party, accompanied by random pictures of some women. I guess it's kind of funny, but the dudes that show up for a party at 2 a.m. are not like the nerds I play League with. They were a little scary. Oh man, I don't know which side I fall on with this one. On the one hand, posting someone's address on the internet is not the best idea, but on the other hand, this is an extremely funny prank. Would you be furious if a bunch of dudes were showing up all night looking for girls? Or would you just think it was hilarious? I think the guy might have gone just a little bit too far here. This was about 10 years ago. I was working at a club. A bachelor group of about 10 came in, including the groom's best friend since high school, the best man. So they're doing the typical bachelor party thing, but are very polite and decent dudes. mostly just drinking and enjoying the risque atmosphere and catching up. The club was near the airport, and I'm pretty sure most of them had flown into town from around the country. All of them were telling us how the bride had implicitly stated no clubs, like this when talking to the best man. The groom and his best man were telling me a story about how they did a talent show in high school together. They had this whole dance routine choreographed to the song It Takes Two by Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. They were so excited to relive it, and it was obvious that they hadn't been able to tell this tale to fresh ears in a while. Their faces were all lit up like kids on Christmas, and they kept jumping up and showing us parts of the dance. They kept explaining how it was awesome because they both remembered the whole routine after all this time. And they even ended with them both doing a jazz split at the same time. So eventually they get the idea that they want to perform it on the main stage together. Now I thought it would be wild to see, so I went to ask the manager, who promptly said, no, insurance and liability issues. Fair enough. I gave the news to the dudes, who had been talking with the rest of their group, and now everyone was very on board with this plan. So when they hear the bad news, they start offering cash. As we all know, money talks, and it was a particularly slow evening, not many patrons to bear witness. So I go back to the manager and explain they are willing to pay. Fine, she says. $200 to rent the stage for the one song, and they have to tip the DJ to play it. $200 is pretty steep for a 5-minute song, but you know, dudes reminiscing, the guys are happy to pay. Now, this is midsummer and all the guys are in cargo shorts and those Tommy Bahama leather sandals. The club wasn't big on a dress code aside from no hats. So these two guys get all ready to take the stage and the DJ puts the song on. These two nailed it. We all sat together watching in complete, genuine delight. I was laughing and clapping and cheering them on. We all were. It was just like they had told us it would be. You could tell they were just having the time of their lives up there. And with the final moments of that song came that jazz split. The jazz split that only the groom decided to go ahead with. I'm assuming the best man had second thoughts on his body's ability to do it, since they were all in their mid-30s. We all watched in awe. But suddenly, the groom's face bounced off the stage like a basketball. My hands clapped over my mouth and everyone just froze for a second in disbelief. Then we all rushed the stage. The dude had slipped on his sandal on the come-down and knocked out his 2 front teeth. He had to be rushed to the ER. He was getting married the next day. I still wonder to this day whatever happened to him and his group. This story is too much. I seriously wish I could see the dance, but maybe not the ending. It really does sound like an amazing performance, and if I couldn't see the dance, I would at least like to know how the groom explained all of this to his bride-to-be. On the first night of what was supposed to be a crisp fall weekend of camping, cookouts, and whitewater canoeing, the groom's older brother and future brother-in-law had a few too many and started arguing. In the beginning, it was just a bunch of petty jabs, idiotic talk. We decided to ignore it. They'd never really gotten along, and we figured that it would blow over. The brother-in-law demanded the keys to the equipment van, climbed in, locked the door behind him, and immediately passed out. At first, we were relieved. Sure, we were angry and in disbelief at what had just happened, but at least the situation was resolved and nobody was hurt. Then we realized our sleeping bags, warm clothing, personal belongings, car keys, and most of the food were still inside the locked van underneath the groom's unconscious, idiot future brother-in-law. We tried to bang on the van doors to wake him up, to no avail. We were able to keep the fire going, but what followed was still one very cold, hungry night in the woods. In the morning, we discovered that the groom's future brother-in-law had capped off his private festivities by vomiting in the back of the van, all over our backpacks and sleeping bags. Oh, and he also left the dome light on all night, draining the van's battery. The groom was so angry, he simply bailed and went home. The rest of us sat around freezing in the morning fog while the brother-in-law cleaned all our gear. Once he was finished, we jump-started the van, abandoned our plans, and got out of the woods. I can't even begin to express how furious I would be if this happened to me. Like, not only did you ruin my bachelor party, But I also had to sleep in the cold without a sleeping bag and a tent? No way. I would seriously consider not inviting this guy to the wedding. Am I wrong? This was at a friend's bachelorette. It was a small group of about 5 girls, including the bride. It was in a city about 3 hours from where we all live. She invited a male friend to a club we were going to because he lived nearby and she hadn't seen him in a while. Her behavior at the club was strange. The bride and her friend were in a corner all night and definitely looked like more than friends. It was incredibly awkward for the rest of us, and he tagged along the rest of the night while she was wearing a white bachelorette dress and her engagement ring. The next morning, she confessed that she'd always had a crush on this friend and wasn't actually attracted to her fiancé. The rest of the trip, she kept asking us what she should do since she didn't physically cheat on her fiancé. Despite all of us telling her to break up with her fiancé, she decided it would be too much to break off a wedding since everything was already paid for. I couldn't stand by her as a friend after seeing that. I went to her wedding and now don't talk to her, but to my knowledge, she is still married to the original fiancé, the one she wasn't attracted to. This is absolutely brutal. I think the storyteller did the right thing in this situation, but what would you do if one of your best friends pulled a stunt like this at their bachelor party? I can't even imagine how awkward it must have been for the girls who witnessed everything and then still watched her walk down the aisle. What a nightmare. For my sister's bachelorette, we had rented a beach house for a 5-day vacation in North Carolina. On day 4, the owner of the house showed up and barged into the house and screamed at all of us that we had to evacuate. None of us had been paying attention to the weather or news or anything, but the hurricane we were vaguely aware of was about a day out from hitting the coast. The woman thought we were ignoring the evacuation notice and told us that if we weren't out within the hour, she was going to call the cops. She was the one who was supposed to tell us, considering she lived there and owned the house, so her aggression was really confusing. We started panicking. We quickly packed up the entire house and cleaned everything. Sadly, this cut the trip short. I have no idea how we were supposed to know about the notice. There were still other people in the neighborhood lounging around their houses, and no preparation measures were being made by any of them for the potential storm. It turned out that when the hurricane hit, it barely skirted the town and everything was fine. Well, I guess escaping a natural disaster is one way to make a bachelorette trip memorable. I would be so furious to find out that the hurricane never actually even came close. But I think I'd rather have my bachelorette weekend ruined over the actual wedding, if it came down to it. I had a friend hit $250,000 on a $5 slot machine at a Shreveport casino at his bachelor party 2 weeks before the ceremony. It actually destroyed his life. With his newfound wealth, he decided to ask his fiancée to sign a prenup. She refused. She had referred to it as our money from the moment she heard the news. And so he walked away. They had to cancel the wedding. Everyone hated him for it. He was practically excommunicated from all our social circles. But 10 years later, something happened that we never saw coming. She filed for bankruptcy twice. In hindsight, he made the right decision. It's sad to think about, but money really does change people. And it looks like this guy dodged a serious bullet by backing out of his wedding at the last minute. Can you imagine how screwed up your life would be after 2 bankruptcies? What a nightmare. I'll never forget this. It was my friend's bachelor party. We organized for a special waitress to serve drinks. She walks out of one of the bedrooms and makes a show of giving the groom a big hug. From the back of the room, a guy goes, "What in the world?" That's when we made the most shocking discovery. It's the best man's sister, no clothes, in front of all of his friends. It was the wildest coincidence ever. She runs up crying, and we just stand there for like 10 seconds in silence before we start laughing hysterically. She lives about an hour away and apparently told the family she worked in hospitality, but nothing more specific. Have you ever heard a story and thought to yourself, "Thank God this didn't happen to me"? I've witnessed some pretty awkward coincidences in my life, but nothing even comes close to this. I wouldn't know whether to laugh or to die of embarrassment. That may be the last tale of a bachelor party gone wrong that we have for you today. But check out the rest of our channel for more wild and jaw-dropping stories. We've got new videos going up every week. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.